And we go back to Pretoria, where our news reporter, SABC news reporter Patricia Fesahi joins us, and standing alongside the chairperson of the IMC, that is Mmamoloko Kubayi. Patricia, good afternoon to you. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much. Of course, a very sensitive issue that continues to dominate headlines in South Africa, the rest of the continent and the world at large, and that has to do with the immigration-related challenges that South Africa is facing, and the Inter-Ministerial Committee that just briefed the media, really just emphasizing the work that they've been doing since the tensions that we have seen in the couple of months, in the couple of weeks, but also just reassuring South Africans that these are not short-term interventions. Government remains committed to dealing with the immigration-related challenges within the bounds of the law and taking human rights into consideration and really prioritizing that. And the law that is also, of course, at the center of this, the police that are working, but also all the different spheres of government, the stakeholders that are coming together to do the work that needs to be done. I want to bring in Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi here. Minister, very important, but also a very sensitive issue that government, the rest of South Africa is dealing with. You mentioned that, again, the 5 points, the feedback, perhaps the, I don't know, the highlights or the much focus areas in that 5 point.
No, thank you very much. I think we've committed that we'll regularly update the nation. We met on Friday, and this was the update from the meeting on Friday, but also to indicate to South Africans what's going to happen to the next 2 weeks, so that when we report, they expect what to expect out of the work. So firstly, today we were reporting about the work done on the borderline, that we are ready to go to cabinet to get it approved, but also we have an implementations plan. That's a 3-year program that would be in terms of upgrading the borderlines. That work, as we reported previously, is led by Minister Motshekga as part of the task team. And then that work, preliminary evaluation, everything has been done. We've been to the border. We're comfortable that the plan responds to the challenges. It's infrastructure, it's technology, and in terms of implementation, so we'll go to cabinet to get cabinet to approve. It's one of the long-term plans. Number 2, it's the issue that we have picked up in the economic side that we are working on going to the next 2 weeks. That would be led by Minister of DTIC, Minister Dau, with Agriculture Department, Tourism, Employment and Labour, Department of Higher Education and Training. This is to ensure that in the areas where we've seen in the public domain where some of the employers are saying they're starting to not have people to do particular work, and we're reflecting on it, but we said we don't want to reflect out of a generic point of view. Let's go into detail. In the 2 weeks, they're expected to do that detailed work and bring us a recommendation with the output. We're expecting to respond to the agricultural sector around the farming labor needed in terms of that. Are we able to retrain? Are we able to have labor workforce to be able to close that? Because we don't want our economy to suffer and lose jobs and lose activities because of what is happening. What has been the impact, for example, on tourism? Have we seen the drop in numbers of tourist arrival in terms of the impact that we have seen, and how are we closing? Whether the sector has been affected in terms of the products and the hospitality, the people, the product owners and all those things. So we're looking at that, and that will be reported in 2 weeks. So we'll go into detail in the next report. We're expecting to do that. We continue in stakeholder engagement, but also the other areas around law enforcement agency. Law enforcement, the feedback we got, because Minister Lamula has been doing the engagement on the continent, and consistently feedback that we're getting is around law enforcement. But also we are seeing the deterioration of those who've been doing door-to-door. So we've been working around the clock to ensure within the communities we don't have people who are impersonating themselves. And I think I want to use this word because they must understand. If you go into a house, you go to a shop, you go to a factory, and you want people to produce documentation, you will be arrested, and the charge will be impersonation of a law enforcement agency, and they must go and look in the schedule how many years you'll go to prison for. Because people don't understand, impersonating a law enforcement agency is a serious crime in this country. So want people to stop it. Give us the details, we'll be able to deal with it. So some of the people have been giving feedback to say, these people have gone into this factory they give us. We've been depositing with the police, and we've said we want to see the arrests happening. So we'll start monitoring the arrest versus the convictions. So the trials, want to see them running, want to start seeing convictions so that it becomes a deterrent. It doesn't become a rhetoric that we talk about in terms of that. But similarly, we've seen some of the foreign nationals who actually retaliated against law enforcement agencies, where we sent law enforcement agencies to conduct the searches, and then we want to also act in those and also make sure that they understand that that actually is defeating the hands of justice. So there are crimes they are committing. It will not be only immigration law that they are actually violating, but also in stopping a police officer or a law enforcement agency to do their work. It's a serious crime in this country. So we also giving those figures of the work that we're doing, but we'll start zooming into that, following up. But we're also reporting to the nation about the link between what we do as the IMC of migration, but also JCPS around organized crime, making sure that those who are here illegally, who commit crimes like the Mexican who went and opened a factory of drugs, will be able to pull that up, start following up to see that we don't have people coming here to undermine the sovereignty of the state. So it's that. We were reporting again the work that we are doing now with municipalities. We've met with the 3 municipalities, Johannesburg, Tshwane, and Ekurhuleni in Gauteng. We will, in the next week, come meeting with the remainder of the municipalities. We're looking at what is it that they're doing in terms of law enforcement agencies, what are the issues that they're battling with, how do they need support from us, and one of the issues that we're looking at is law enforcement or by law enforcement, including enforcement in terms of the hijacked buildings. Feedback is that we've started to profile in many of the areas, profiling these buildings to check what activities happen. Some of them have been turned into drug dens. We are working together both as the IMC from immigration, but also linking up with organized crime to deal with this issue, organized crime teams to deal with this issue. So it's, again, another area of work. We also reported about the de-escalation of the TRPC in Musina from 20,000 capacity to 1,500 capacity. You'd remember that was temporary, was not permanent. So it was temporary. We are acknowledging that there are still numbers that we are processing, but from an average level, it's 1,500 that we've got. So that's the update that we've got. But also to say to people, it's not because we are going to abdicate our responsibility. So we've communicated through COCTA with provinces, municipalities, in terms of assembling points, should this, and those will be permanent for us, so that in future we don't have where we don't know how to react and what to do, and you take days before reaction is been a response to a matter. So you can't plan for a crime to be done, but you also have to put mechanisms in place should that crime be done.
We've seen tensions that continue to simmer in areas such as Vereniging between South Africans and perhaps some foreign-owned shop owners there. Are there plans to perhaps go to the ground and have direct discussions with everyone in such areas, not just for Vereniging, but wherever this may stem up?
Look, we have requested through Minister Nchabeni to the Deputy President and the Steering Committee that national dialogue around issues of migration is needed. As we interact with communities, there's a misunderstanding of illegal and legal migrant. There's misunderstanding of our laws, but there's also just a belief that certain things should not happen. And we do believe that the national dialogue process can help us, one, educate our society, get feedback on what they are not happy about, but give feedback from our side as government on what we believe are the difficulties. For example, you can't just go and start fighting. You don't have legal way of knowing this one is illegal, this one is illegal. Some of them are refugees. And in terms of our laws, the IMC was reminding me on Friday to say, you can't be confused, Chair. Refugees in this country have authority, and it's legal for them to have economic activities. Refugees and asylum. Now, it's only us who know this one has correct asylum papers or refugee papers. It's only those who are illegal here who've got to, but if they do not have refugee status, for example, they just have a passport that gives them 3 months, then those ones have to be in terms of skills or visiting. So it's those things that we're looking at, but we do believe that through this engagement and through our media briefings regularly, we are starting to educate our people. We are starting to give concepts or give context on what can happen and what cannot happen. So we pay attention to those. I think law enforcement agencies will deal with that and give us feedback if there is a need for us to intervene and go and have this conversation in communities. But from where I'm sitting is that these conversations are needed across the country. These conversations are important, and so that we can understand as a country the South Africa we want to build, so that we can understand as a country that there is no single country in this world that can live on its own without migrants. It doesn't happen. And it's not going to happen. So we've got to understand what are the context of migration in a country.
Minister, just lastly, Minister Lamula touched on it, and that is the ongoing perhaps misinformation, in particular on social media, that there are these crazy tensions between South Africa and the rest of the African leaders, which hamper diplomatic relations, which ultimately might collapse the South African economy. In particular, some believing that with a lot of the illegal migrants who have left the country, that has left South Africa in a dire state. If you can maybe just touch on that, because it is really concerning that we see a lot of this wrong information that continues to be peddled.
Yeah, the misinformation changes in shape and size, I guess. Initially, it would be videos that are wrong, saying this has happened when it has not happened. So it has moved from that incident on the ground, but also its perpetuation of isolation of South Africa through social media misinformation. So where it will create as if there's been isolation of South Africa when it's not. I mean, you would have seen from social media of DECO, when Minister met with the President of Ghana. So it's those things. She was not rejected. We are not rejected. I reported even last time that President continues to interact with his counterparts. And the feedback we get is that they understand the challenges that we are faced with. These are supporters. But more so, they are just saying, make sure that these things are done within the law. And that's what we agree, all of us. You can't have individuals deciding to turn themselves into law enforcement agencies. That's what they are saying. And we agree as a country. We've said that. So there is no difference in terms of perspective where we stand. We've stood in many times supporting many of these countries on the continent as South Africa, sometimes even to our own detriment. And we're not the people, I think our humility, we're not the people that blow our horns to say, this country was in trouble, we went over and above to go and support them and do this. We are a country that believes that we can't survive as a country without our partners on the continent. We can't survive as a country when Africa itself has gone backwards. And that's why the notion of saying, yes, let's deal with the migration holistically, the pull and push factor, it will deal with silencing of the guns on the continent. Because when they are silenced, individuals will not run away from their own country. We deal with the issues of growth. That's why we champion the African free trade on the continent, because we understood if South Africa continues to grow and it industrializes and leaves everybody behind, there's no value. So there is opportunity for us to trade amongst ourselves, but also holistically understand what does it mean when the continent works in a unified manner with its resources that it has, the mineral resources, the scarce resources. If we can coordinate and work together effectively, I can tell you we'll see a growth. There's so much potential of this continent that others will divide it to their own interest. against the continent unified. We've seen it over years, the illicit flows. And that's why South Africa has championed. It was through its president, former president, who championed that work to understand what are the illicit flows out of Africa, and therefore wanted to ensure that this actually responds to growth of the continent. So we don't think that our targeting in many fronts, when those people say that we are isolated, we should not only saying that we are isolated, they actually champion for us to be isolated. And we appreciate the understanding of the heads of states on this continent that there is no way and there's no necessity, there is no rationale. Even those who went to ICC, when you look at their matter, it's flimsy. You can't take a country there because these incidences were not sponsored by the country, were not sponsored by government. And actually government has gone over and above. It's required in terms of the treaties and the legislation to be able to respond to it and support foreign nationals in our shores.
All right, thank you so much. The committee has also made sure to just remind the nation that they will be back in 2 weeks to give another update, as this is part of the efforts to just make sure that the country and the world at large, is well informed about the work that they continue to do. For now, it's back to studio.
Thank you very much to SABC News reporter there, Patricia Fesach.